If you guys enjoy what I do, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps the channel and it's free and easy to do. Welcome to my channel where we cover the lore of Final Fantasy XIV. We cover the stories both big and small, the epic and the cute, the silly and the tragic. I hope you all enjoy the ride, and welcome to the Chronicler of Lore. It's been a while since the Warrior of Light checked in with Claudia and the others at Labyrinthos, and the man, after a lot of sleepless nights, has apparently made a breakthrough, one that he's so eager to talk about that he'll likely miss some important bits, so his assistant Nemgigi calms him down so he can focus. Once she does, instead of picking up where you left off, he decides to give you a full recap of the entire Pandemonium mission, including the parts that you were there for. One thing you can count on a scientist to do is take a long time getting to the point. After you had come back from Pandemonium, Claudian and his people had spent a lot of time trying to figure out the nature of the crystal that they had found. He had detected an odd ether signature from it that he thinks came from the memories that were stored inside of it. The ether seems to want to be made complete, and after studying it a bit more, he discovered an identical signature coming from somewhere else, meaning there's a matching crystal somewhere in your time. And Claudian plans on going to find it. He doesn't think it'll be hard to find, so he's going to take the trip alone while you go back to Pandemonium to see what other secrets you can find. From what he's guessed, the time travel from the Crystal Tower doesn't let you pick when you appear, so time should be moving forward at a regular pace on Elpis, meaning you should check in with Themis and Erichthonios at regular intervals. Claudian's assistants don't want the man to head off alone, but he's already hired a ship and pilot, so there's really no way to talk him out of it, and he decides to head off before they can try anymore. Nemgigi's been worried about him because he's been a little more absent-minded than usual, not to mention the fact that he seems to be the only one that can sense the crystal's ether. That alone has him thinking that he can solve this mystery by himself. He's making his colleagues feel useless, but they hope he'll be back to normal after his little adventure. Regardless, the Warrior of Light needs to get back to Pandemonium, and since you have to pass through Elpis to get there, Nemgigi wants you to do something for her. She wants you to find out more about the creatures in Pandemonium. She wants to know their whole story, like what made them get locked away in the first place. She knows that the ancients kept good records, and that bit of information might help you be at least a little more prepared if you have to fight again. Since the Warrior of Light usually takes the shoot first and shoot again later approach to problem solving, this may make for a good change of pace. Back in Elpis, when you go to check on the records, it turns out that Themis was in the process of doing the same thing. And he's already gotten all the information, which saves you from having to do something as annoying as research. He had taken down the warding seals blocking your way into Abyssos, and he had decided to play a hunch while he waited for you to come back. The wards in Pandemonium have still been under regular attack by your unseen enemy, but there's been no major attacks that Themis doesn't think that Erichthonios can handle without him. He's been working hard at mastering the interment spells so he can lock up the creatures without Themis' help, so he was giving the man time to practice. Themis plans on giving him a bit more time because he has one more thing that he wants to look into, and he wants you to come with him. He had been wondering why every one of the warders in Pandemonium either really hated or really loved Lahabrea. Hephaestus was totally devoted to the man, and Erichthonios hates him with a passion. That doesn't sound all that strange to you, but among the ancients that level of extreme emotion is rare, even among family members. Themis is grateful to his own parents for what they did for him, but there are no strong feelings between them. They all see each other as equals, and that's how most of the ancients see everyone else. The researchers of Pandemonium seem outright obsessed with Lahabrea in a way that seems unnatural. That's not the only thing he found weird, so he decided to just ask a member of the Words of Lahabrea about it. The first thing he wants to know is why Pandemonium was built under Elpis in the first place, since the governing body doesn't really have any say in its day-to-day operations. Themis had thought that it was so Elpis' faulty creatures could be easily sent over there, but it turns out that most of Pandemonium's specimens don't even come from there. They're sent from all over, even the Words of Lahabrea have sent over a few. So it would make more sense, at least to Themis, if Pandemonium had been built near the Academia at Niter. The speaker from the Words of Lahabrea doesn't seem to have a problem answering Themis' questions, especially since some of their members have asked the same thing a time or two. Pandemonium's not exactly something that you can just hook a chain to and drag somewhere else, and until recently, at least recently in the minds of the immortals, most of the creations in Pandemonium had come from Elpis. After time, some creations that weren't even seen as fit to send to Elpis caught the eye of Pandemonium's researchers and they had them sent over. That seems to go against the original purposes of the place, so Themis wants to know who decides what creatures to study. Turns out that those decisions come directly from Lahabrea himself, which means if somebody's doing some inappropriate experiments in Pandemonium, it would have to be under Lahabrea's orders. That sounds like an accusation which doesn't go over well with the speaker. Lahabrea wouldn't abuse his power, and if by some miracle he decided to try to, the other keywards do have enough authority to stop him from doing that. But none of that is possible, since the words of Lahabrea recently got a report straight from Pandemonium that everything was fine. Since you and Themis both know that's a lie, that means one of the keywards is working with whoever is causing the problem, something that Themis waits to say until after the speaker leaves. The two of you decide that it's best to get back to Pandemonium, because if there's another rogue keyword, then leaving Erichthonios alone may not be as safe as Themis had thought. The warder is practicing the interment spell, but even though he's been working non-stop on the technique, he still can't do it properly, and time is running out. It's running out faster than he thinks, because he senses something behind him. It's a familiar from the Phoenix, which is impossible since Erichthonios knows that the thing is sealed away. The person who's speaking through the familiar admits that it is still locked up, and he's not all that happy about it since he went through a lot of trouble to free the thing. He does apologize for not showing up in person, but since he no longer controls Asphodelos, he wasn't going to put himself at risk. Erichthonios doesn't need the man to show up since he would recognize his father's voice anywhere. The person talking to him is Lahabrea, and it seems like he's been behind this entire thing. And he plans on using Erichthonios for whatever his plans are, so he reaches out and snatches the man, but the Warrior of Light and Themis show up right on time to make the familiar drop him and leave. Erichthonios is more than a little happy that the two of you showed up because he has no idea what the thing was about to do to him, and he wanted to tell you that Lahabrea is the mastermind behind all of this. Themis admits that Lahabrea has both the skill and position to pull something like this off, but the Lahabrea he knows wouldn't actually do it. The Warrior of Light has a completely different view of the man considering her own personal experiences with him, but her opinion's been formed from the man she dealt with after he had gone through a whole lot of trauma, so Themis could be right, and the disaster at Pandemonium could be a step beyond what Lahabrea would do to reach his goals. During the time that they met, while he did seem like someone who would take some odd routes to solve a problem, he didn't come off as someone who didn't understand what was right and wrong. The truth is, none of you will know for sure unless you head deeper into Pandemonium and see for yourself. And that'll be dangerous, because whether Lahabrea is the mastermind or not, the person running the show and his lackeys will probably try to kill you when you set foot into Abyssos. Themis decides to guard Erichthonios just in case they try to capture him again, which means the Warrior of Light will have to take the lead, of course. Since he doesn't know what will happen, Themis casts a spell on you that will summon the Phantom Warriors to help even if you get separated. It's a good thing that he does, because as soon as the three of you set foot into Abyssos, you're all teleported off into different locations. As luck would have it, you're snatched into a cage with a carbuncle. Not the cute little glowing one that Alphino used to run around with, but a creature that looks like what you'd get if Ifrit and a behemoth had a baby that they fed cocaine instead of milk. This carbuncle is hyperactive, violent, and apparently has the munchies, which makes me wonder what drugs did the ancient use before he decided to make this thing. After a very long and painful fight, the Warrior of Light and her summoned allies knock the thing unconscious, which gives Themis and Erichthonios time to show up and seal it away. Just imagine if that was the carbuncle that Tataru had summoned back when she tried to be an Arcanist. I doubt she would have survived the experience. The area you'd been sent to is where creations made of poisons are studied, and it seems like the mastermind behind this whole thing was specifically trying to kill you. Before the three of you can figure out why, Lahabrea himself appears and admits that he's actually happy that you proved to be strong enough to survive on your own. It'll make you an interesting test subject. At least he looks and sounds like Lahabrea, but Themis won't be convinced, at least not until the man answers his question. Lahabrea refuses and binds Themis in a trap, one that was supposed to catch both of you, but apparently your ether is so thin that it doesn't work. So he decides to try something else. The Warrior of Light is perfectly fine with fighting Lahabrea since she has so much practice at doing it, but he warns her that if she does kill him, Erichthonios will lose his chance to see his mother again. The fact that Lahabrea even mentioned Athena makes Erichthonios want to attack him, something that would have given the boy a legendary beating, but Themis stops him. He wants his question answered first, and all he asks is for Lahabrea to say his name. When the man calls him Themis, that's all he needed to know to be certain that the man is not Lahabrea. Then he casually breaks out of the trap, more than a little upset that the man would insult Lahabrea by pretending to be him. Erichthonios is confused because he may not like his dad, but he does know what the man looks and sounds like. But Themis is positive that Lahabrea would never call him by that name. Right on cue, a fireball hits the fake Lahabrea in the face, and the real one shows up calling Themis by a name that most of you knew was his way back when you first headbutted him at the beginning of the story. Elidibus. Since he's been outed, the imposter takes off his disguise and reveals his own face. He claims that he hated wearing it anyway because after all, who would want to pretend to be a man who murdered his own wife? His name is actually Hephaestus, and after telling Erichthonios that he should be calling him dad, he vanishes, leaving you all very confused. Instead of providing any answers, Lahabrea tells Elidibus that he has some explaining to do once you're in a safer place, and you all follow him, after Elidibus apologizes for hiding his identity from you, not like you didn't know it already. After Azem and Themis had detected the oddness from Pandemonium, they had decided that it would be for the best if he hid his station as Elidibus while he investigated. There's more to this story, but before Themis goes into the details, he wants to talk about you a bit. Even though neither he nor Azem had met you before, she had a lot of praise for you, which is why Themis had decided to work with you in the first place. Azem found the fact that you and she were similar as something that was funny, but she somehow knew that you'd make for a strong ally. The fact that Themis had heard about Vanna traveling with you made him trust you even more, despite how weird you and your ether actually are. He had just wanted to tell you that before he got sidetracked with all the craziness that's going on. Since Erichthonios dives right into questioning his father in a very disrespectful way, the time for friendly banter is brought to a very swift end. After making it known that he had hoped to never talk to his dad again, he wants to know who Hephaestus is and why he looks like a younger Lahabrea. And he wants to know why Lahabrea only just decided to show up, because he definitely had to know what was going on in Pandemonium long before now. Lahabrea had known what was happening, but he also knew that Themis and Azem had decided to investigate, so he didn't see any reason to join in, at least not at first. That changed when a keyword sent a message saying that everything was running like normal. After that, he figured that whatever Hephaestus had done was beyond Themis' control, so he came to check himself. The fact that he knew someone was pretending to be a member of the convocation and hadn't done anything about it was something that Themis had never thought he'd see. So he knows the explanation for all of this has to be pretty interesting. Technically, no one is pretending to be Lahabrea. Hephaestus is using Lahabrea's real name because he is in fact a part of Lahabrea himself. He knows all of the same things, has all of the same skills, but he's fueled by all of the negative emotions that the ancients pretend like they don't have. Greed, envy, lust, and such. He was a product of an experiment gone wrong from when Lahabrea was younger, and he had thought he'd sealed the man away. Apparently he hadn't done a good job of that. Erichthonios wants to know why Hephaestus had blamed Lahabrea for Athena's death. What he really wants to know was, did Lahabrea kill his mother? Lahabrea says that the man is insane and he needs to be put down before he brings disaster to the star, but he doesn't confirm or deny the accusation. What he does do is decide that since he's in charge of Pandemonium, as of this moment, the place needs to be abandoned and destroyed immediately. The fact that he's willing to leave the warders who are still trapped in the place to die doesn't surprise Themis, since the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, so sacrificing the researchers of Pandemonium to prevent a star-wide catastrophe makes sense. But while it's the right decision, it isn't necessarily the best decision. Themis and Azem had even considered it themselves. That was why Themis had decided to head into the place to begin with, so he could see if total annihilation was in fact the best way to go. None of that matters. Once Lahabrea got involved as the head keyword, his first job is to make sure nothing in Pandemonium affects the outside world, regardless of the cost. How any of you feel about it is pretty irrelevant. Obviously, Erichthonios is upset about this, especially since you all, emphasis on the you part, have been dealing with and overcoming each of Pandemonium's creatures. Lahabrea is a bit curious about you and your strange ether, and since you have been doing most of the heavy lifting, Themis wants to hear what you think should be done. Technically, what you think wouldn't matter all that much, but the Warrior of Light points out that since Themis holds the seat of the emissary Elidibus, he can determine if your approach is a good way of keeping Pandemonium's problems from spilling over to the rest of the star. If he says that it is, then even Lahabrea will have to listen. Of course, he could vote in Lahabrea's favor, then there would be no more argument and Pandemonium would be destroyed with whoever is still trapped inside. But he decides to keep on as you had been instead of taking Lahabrea's scorched earth approach, at least until after Lahabrea sees you all in action. Being a stickler for the rules even when he doesn't agree with them, Lahabrea agrees to follow Themis' judgment, but if you don't seem like you're capable of containing the threat, then he will destroy Pandemonium. Erichthonios is confident that you'll succeed, a confidence that Lahabrea doesn't remember him having before. Getting even that small compliment from Lahabrea annoys the man, and he decides that he's had enough of talking to his father and walks off. Themis gets that the man doesn't like his dad, but this mission is already going to be difficult without adding family drama to it, so Themis sends you to talk to the man to help him get his mind right. While he is upset, Erichthonios makes it a point to let you know that he appreciates you helping keep Lahabrea from destroying Pandemonium. He just couldn't let that happen after seeing how the Key Wards had given up their chance to escape when this all had started so they could keep the creatures contained. If they fought that hard, he knows that none of them would want to see the place destroyed, and they definitely don't deserve to be abandoned. Aside from that, he still wants to find out what Hephaestus knows about his mother, because he doesn't think the man was lying about Lahabrea killing her. The only thing they had told him was that she died in an accident, and no one would answer any of his questions about it. Knowing his father, the man may not have killed her, but he would have left her to die to save the star, and Erichthonios really wants to know what happened. Having someone to vent his frustrations to works wonders for calming the man down, and now he's ready to get to work proving to Lahabrea that you all can save Pandemonium. And the best way to start is by taking Abyssos back, even though he doesn't want to. Since Lahabrea will know more about what you'll face deeper inside of the facility, Erichthonios decides that you should ask him, since he seems eager to see you in action anyway. Lahabrea had asked Themis about you while you were talking to his son, and hearing that you're connected to Azem in some way has Lahabrea even more interested in you, especially since you're unique, even among the literal thousands of concepts he's seen. Finding unique things in their travels seems to be a common trait among the holders of Azem's seat, since they tend to get more involved with people and things that more logical people would ignore. Kind of like what you're doing with Pandemonium. And Azem's tendency to ignore logic and do what she feels usually corrupts everyone she deals with. Selk said the same thing, but Themis promises that he won't let Azem's way of doing things interfere with his duty. Lahabrea points out that he kinda just did by not letting him just destroy Pandemonium outright, but what's done is done, and Lahabrea has no problem telling you about Abyssos, even though he doesn't have control of it anymore. For starters, he doesn't sense any more monsters wandering around the area, but Hephaestus has left something worse, Hegemone, the key ward of Abyssos, and she's been corrupted. She was very gifted in magic and extremely intelligent, and she hasn't lost any of that after her forced transformation. Since some of the normal her still remains, there may be a way to fix her, and Erichthonios wants to seal her away until you all can figure out how. That means you'll have to fight her. The Warrior of Light and her summoned allies get to see firsthand just how skilled at magic the corrupted Key Ward is, and while she's formidable, she still gets wrecked, and Themis and Erichthonios seal her away. Erichthonios is pretty smug, since the victory means that Lahabrea has to admit that the method they're using is good enough to save the place. Lahabrea has no problem saying that he was wrong, and seeing how powerful the Warrior of Light is despite her thin ether is making it all the more interesting, so he agrees that your mission can continue, but he doesn't think Erichthonios should be a part of it. He's not strong enough to seal the creatures alone, and just hoping it works is not a good strategy, especially since failure means death for more than just himself. But that's not the main reason Lahabrea doesn't think he should stay a part of the team. It's his motives. His primary focus should be on stopping Hephaestus, but the fact that he's worrying about resurrecting his mother makes him dangerous to the entire mission. His mother is dead, probably reincarnated in a new vessel by now, and the life cycle needs to continue as it's supposed to. Even if Hephaestus could bring Athena's body back, it wouldn't be her. Erichthonios still thinks it's possible that Hephaestus may have figured out a way to really revive her, proving Lahabrea right. If he's that focused on his personal mission over the true one, what would he do if the price of resurrecting his mother was one of his own teammates, or the lives of all of the captives that he claims that he wants to save? From the way he's acting, Lahabrea thinks all of that was an act, and he hasn't matured one bit from the ignorant child that he's always been. That last insult is more than Erichthonios can take, and he snaps on Lahabrea, calling him a selfish murderer. In the moment where he loses control, Hephaestus calls out to him, and despite hearing another voice telling him not to listen, Erichthonios teleports off to join the man. Whatever he had used to take over Erichthonios' mind worked quicker than Lahabrea had expected. He had felt his son's hatred for him growing from the minute he had showed up, and he knew that it was only a matter of time before he snapped, and that let the spell take him. The spell was so good that Erichthonios didn't even notice it, which means the other keywards likely didn't either. In the midst of the attack, you all felt another presence, one that was trying to warn Erichthonios, but the warning came too late. Lahabrea taunting the boy hadn't really helped the situation either. Hephaestus had likely known that would happen too, since he is Lahabrea, and now there's no telling what will happen to his son. Themis doesn't think it's too late to save the man. You just need to take Abyssos before Erichthonios fully loses himself. But it won't be easy to get through the place. Hephaestus has laid traps all over that will kill you if you trigger them. But with your thin ether, the warrior of light can pass them without setting them off. At least that's what happened before. If he's adjusted his traps, this will be a very short rescue attempt. While you need to be fast, Themis thinks it'll help if Lahabrea explains why Hephaestus wants Erichthonios. He also wants to know why Lahabrea seems to have a real problem with his son's devotion to his mother. The man acts like grieving for the woman is just as bad as trying to raise her from the dead. Since Athena seems to be the driving force behind Hephaestus and Erichthonios, the situation does need to be talked about. Lahabrea admits that it does need to be discussed, but only after you deal with the last keyword. Her name is Accusations, and she's worked at Pandemonium since it was founded, and her magical skills are beyond all of the other keywords. Hephaestus' experiments wouldn't work without her, so he's locked her away in a spot that you can't just walk to or teleport to under normal circumstances. But with your ether being like it is, Lahabrea can send you straight to her. Themis will help you with the fight as best he can, and from what Lahabrea can sense, whatever's been done to Accusations left very little of her, so there's no reason to try to contain her. All you can do now is put her out of her misery. The keyword has been turned into a very disgusting tree beast, but the change has done nothing to lessen her power, which makes for a difficult fight. But again, the warrior of light comes out on top. The moment she dies, a pathway that allows Themis and Lahabrea to teleport in appears, which is strange since it seems like someone made it specifically for them. It was so neatly made and protected that it had to be done by a keyword of great skill, and Accusations, or what's left of her, appears to let you know that it was her that did it. She doesn't have much power left, but she is happy to see Lahabrea again. Your fight helped her free herself from Hephaestus' spell, but it bombards you with so many emotions that it's hard to even remember what you really want to do. So if you don't remember that you want to be free, you could end up thinking that you want to serve Hephaestus. Honestly, this sounds like the origins of tempering. Accusations was strong enough that at least a small part of her mind stayed her, and she was able to reach out and talk in bursts to the outside world. She was the one who had sent the report saying that all was well to hopefully draw Lahabrea. She doesn't have much time left before she fades away entirely, and she has one thing that she needs to let you know to keep the past from repeating itself. She apologizes to Lahabrea, but she has to let you and Themis know why Hephaestus wants Erichthonios. Whether he was okay with it or not, she didn't wait for Lahabrea to say so before she made an image showing herself and a young Lahabrea. He had just killed Athena and sealed a part of his memories and emotions away inside of Hephaestus, and after that Accusations had wanted to know whether or not he was going to tell Erichthonios the truth. He had decided to leave his memories buried with his other half, because he was sure that Erichthonios would let the world burn if it meant saving his mother, and hearing the truth would break him. Lahabrea would rather let his son hate him than to let him know that the mother he had loved so much just saw him as a tool to be used and discarded. Besides, even if he told the boy the truth, he was pretty sure that in the end he would find some way to blame Lahabrea, or maybe himself. So if dealing with his son hating him was the price of keeping Erichthonios mentally able to serve the star, Lahabrea was okay with it. It turns out that Lahabrea was actually keeping the secret to help his son, but Accusations wasn't surprised by that. Lahabrea is a problem solver for everyone else but himself. There's more to the story, but Lahabrea will have to tell you himself because her time is up. He thanks her for what she did, since it would have been hard for him to even start telling the story, but after everything he sacrificed for the star's prosperity, she was more than willing to help. It was a good last act before she fades away, something that Hephaestus definitely sensed, so you all leave before he attacks you. Lahabrea adds more details to Athena's story once you're all safely back outside. She was consumed by her research and willing to kill her own son if it sped up the experiments. That's why she had given him a position in Pandemonium in the first place. It will make him easier to use as a test subject. Themis fully understands why Lahabrea would keep that a secret. Erichthonios probably couldn't handle that news. Hephaestus has picked up where Athena left off and succeeded in creating the Hemithoi. Lahabrea doesn't know what his plans are, but it has something to do with bringing Athena back. Themis wants to know the rest of the story, but that'll have to wait until after you free Erichthonios. Reaching him will be easier since without Aegis, Hephaestus can no longer manipulate Pandemonium, and the only place that he could be is in Tartarus, where Athena had built her laboratory. That doesn't mean the man is going to just let you all walk in. Themis will focus on keeping him from blowing you up on your way there, which means Lahabrea will have to summon your phantom allies, but he wants to be the one to finish off Hephaestus when you're done. He doesn't plan on sealing the man away again, and after the modifications he's done to his body, sealing him might not work anyway, which means it's time for you to face Hephaestus. Erichthonios is chained up and unconscious in the lab, and Hephaestus is more than ready for you. The man's clearly been lifting weights because his new form is jacked, and kinda scary looking. It's not all show either. He's strong, but he still gets whooped by the Warrior of Light, and Lahabrea comes in to finish him off. Hephaestus refuses to admit defeat, and in a true coward move, he puts Erichthonios between himself and you like a human shield. While he talks like he wants to bring Erichthonios' dreams to life, the fact that he's hiding behind him proves that he doesn't care any more for the man than Athena had, and he's proved that even more by not telling Erichthonios the truth about his mother. He claims to care for the man like a father, but his actions say the opposite, and fulfilling a child's wish when it'll hurt them in the end is probably the worst thing a parent could do. Lahabrea admits that after he killed Athena, he promised to guide the star down a good path, which made him neglect his son, so he has to admit that he's been a bad father, but he won't let anyone manipulate and use his kid, especially not a damaged clone of himself. Erichthonios heard everything that was said about his mother, and he heard what his father had said, which helped him regain his own mind enough to break free, and he turns on Hephaestus and successfully uses the interment spell to trap the man. Lahabrea joins in, adding his own power to the spell, and they seal Hephaestus away inside of a crystal. Despite still being light on the praise, Lahabrea admits that his son did well, especially since he was able to trap Hephaestus while he was only half recovered from the man's spell. His skill with the interment spell is far beyond what Lahabrea had expected. It only takes a moment for all signs of Hephaestus' spell to vanish from Erichthonios' mind, and the fact that the spells attacking Pandemonium's barriers has faded away causes Themis to come running in to see if it's all finally over. It is, and Hephaestus has been locked away just how Lahabrea had done before. Granted, the last time he hadn't actually had a body. That revelation makes Themis remind Lahabrea that he was supposed to tell you all the rest of the story. Since Erichthonios wants to hear it too, Lahabrea decides that it's time to let it all out. Athena had been a genius that was so focused on her research that sometimes she would forget to eat or sleep on her search for knowledge about the secrets of life. The ancients create life, but they can't make souls. They can also enhance and change their physical bodies, but they still have limits. Athena was looking for a way to break those limits, something that's not meant to be done. Most people wouldn't even have the brain power to try and get it done. Since Lahabrea was the leader of the Words of Lahabrea, he talked to Athena about transcending their limits a lot. When a scientist finds a challenge, they always try to figure out how to overcome it. While they were talking, Lahabrea started to think that the way they could ascend would be to merge with one of their creations. That way they could make something that countered their own weaknesses, fuse with it, and become something greater. It was just a theory, but Athena wanted him to work on it more and tell her about it. They started to talk more, and one thing led to another, which led to Erichthonios. I'm not going to explain how they made him. I'm pretty sure you can find something about it on the internet. Lahabrea had thought that Athena really cared about him, so he didn't notice her hidden motives, which is why once Pandemonium was built and she wanted to lead the researchers, he didn't see anything wrong with it. That gave her the ability to do whatever experiment she wanted. When he found out what she was doing, he rushed to Athena's hidden lab, not really knowing what he'd find, and for this part he figures it'll be better to show you, so he makes a scene similar to what Aegis had shown you before. Athena has Erichthonios bound, similar to how Hephaestus had him, and Lahabrea warns her that if she doesn't let him go, he'll have to kill her. She's willing to die for her research, but she wants Lahabrea to know what she's doing. Once he understands what she's doing, she doesn't think that he'll want to stop her. Her explaining it wouldn't be enough, so she wants to bond souls with him. That way he'll be able to get his answers. Because he's actually curious, the two of them link. The only thing he saw in her was a desire to truly become a god that transcends mortality and their plane of existence, and she didn't care about anything else, not Lahabrea, their son, or the star itself. Because of that, Lahabrea separates himself from her, but she knows that he's just as curious to see if her experiments with Erichthonios would bear fruit as she is, and now that they've shared a soul, there's no way for him to get rid of that curiosity. Eventually he'll walk the same path as she did, and he'll see her experiments to completion. To make sure that he doesn't, Lahabrea tears that part of his mind and emotions away and leaves behind only his duty as Lahabrea. The other part he locked in a crystal that became Hephaestus. Themis, in a very polite way, says that Lahabrea is insane, since what he did to suppress his memories could have rewritten who he was. The rest of the convocation had noticed the change, and some of them had some idea about what he'd done. He could have destroyed the crystal, but since he'd never done anything like that to himself before, he didn't want to throw away that piece of his soul just in case he needed to put it back. He figures Athena had known what he would do and made a vessel to use the pieces of his soul to carry on the mission after her death. After hearing the story, Erichthonios actually believes his father had really been looking out for him and decides to tell his dad thank you before you all head back outside. Themis is eager to go and tell the story to Azem, but Lahabrea can't let him leave until they fully restore the place. And with the lab in Tartarus, they should be able to undo what was done to the researchers' minds and bodies. Erichthonios still wants to know what made him so important and how Hephaestus planned on reviving Athena. Not that he plans on doing it, but he just wants to know. Since curiosity has already killed a few people, Lahabrea forbids him from diving any deeper into it, and he plans on destroying Hephaestus' crystal to make sure this mess doesn't happen again. Themis agrees, although there's still the crystal that the Warrior of Light had to deal with. Lahabrea hadn't even known about it, but hearing that it had a message in it piques his curiosity. Storing memories inside of a crystal is one thing, but putting a warning inside one is a lot more difficult. It also means that someone other than the four of you and Azem knew what was going on in Pandemonium. It could be one of the other warders, but they won't know until after they question them. Since that'll take a while, the Warrior of Light heads home to get the crystal so she can bring it back to Lahabrea. That's gonna be difficult because Claudian's assistants have lost contact with his airship, and there's more. Nemgigi has detected a massive amount of energy coming from the ethereal sea. Of course, you go to the Atheoscope with them to check it out, and the first thing you see is Pandemonium has appeared in your world. Something that is clearly not good, especially since his appearance has gotten Alphino's dad's attention too. This concludes the story of Pandemonium Abyssos. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe, and donate to the channel so I can keep bringing you guys new content. Until next time, later.